Hello everybody and welcome to our webinar today. My name is Ryan Smith and I'm a lead consultant here at Ten10. I'm also the RPA program manager for one of our clients based in the legal sector. In this webinar, we'll explore the differences and similarities between RPA technology and automated test solutions, which you may already be familiar with or already using within your organization. This will include a comparison of both the tools and approaches to deliver an automation solution successfully. This is to help you understand what we believe the future of automation looks like and how you can leverage RPA, test automation, or both to achieve your specific business needs. So what exactly is RPA? Well, in its purest form, RPA is a software solution to automate your existing manual business processes in the same way that human users perform them. This means that every mouse click, keyboard input, and escalation point is captured and coded to be run with reduced or no required human input. It can of course also be integrated into other services and applications such as databases or APIs to transform a manual process performed at the GUI layer into an automated process that runs behind the scenes. This means it can be a very cost-effective and tactical way to introduce automation to your existing processes or apps, which would otherwise be too risky to attempt to change. Now, there may be a number of reasons for this risk. For example, these may be legacy apps which, with the required software engineering knowledge to either update or replace them, is no longer present within your organization, or because these applications are deemed business critical and any form of downtime or risk to production availability is simply unacceptable. As RPA automates the process performed by the human user by emulating their action, it can be a highly controversial technology. In our experience, none of our clients have sought to replace the human staff with software robots, or automated assistants as we sometimes prefer to call them. Instead, these assistants are created to augment existing workforces and perform the repetitive processes which can be error-prone or result in high staff fatigue, which can lead to high attrition rates. This allows human team members to focus more on the valuable or varied work, which requires their ingenuity and their experience. At this time, the majority of feature-complete or sophisticated RPA applications available on the market are proprietary. RPA software vendors such as UiPath and Automation Anywhere promote one-size-fits-all applications for designing, building, and monitoring RPA processes. So let's talk about some use cases. RPA tools, by design, focus on building automated solutions to either replace or streamline manual processes in production settings. Such use cases include, but are not limited to, service desk assistants to perform microprocesses on the workstations of support team members or to instigate behind-the-scenes processes through process triggers. Chatbots, which can be used to streamline customer or employee engagement to allow simple tasks to be actioned or queries answered based on user input. The completion of external or internal forms, which can be invaluable for large data sets with tight submission deadlines. Interaction with databases to allow existing data to be retrieved and used by bots, either through database queries or APIs. Web scraping to collect important information hosted on external sites which the business may need to monitor for its own needs. And finally, data transformation, extraction, and sanitization of pre-existing internal data or new data entering internal systems from external sources to ensure compliance and consistency. Of course, all of the above examples can be achieved through a myriad of alternative solutions or approaches, and in some cases alternative approaches or off-the-shelf solutions may be more suitable to your organization's needs. However, the multitude of use cases just really goes to show how flexible this technology is in its ability to meet your objectives or needs. So what about test automation? Test automation provides rapid confidence in software following the introduction of new features or changes. Tests can be run quickly and automatically to verify that all positive and negative scenarios are performing as expected following the introduction of change. Test automation is typically split into application testing, which verifies that applications operate as desired when used in both intended and sometimes unintended ways that a user might interact with your software. Performance testing verifies your application is performant under the many stresses that may arise due to user volume or activity, either increased volume or volume as expected. Many proprietary test automation solutions do exist which focus on low code or all-in-one applications designed to speed up the creation and stability of test cases. However, many of our clients favor an open source solution due to the low implementation costs and wide support available from the test automation community. Now that we know of the similarities, let's talk about differences. Understanding the differentiators and precisely what you hope to achieve through business process automation is key to selecting the correct technology stack to help you achieve your goals. Tools with a specific focus on automating business processes often come with out-of-the-box functionality for working with many commonly used business applications, such as Microsoft Office, Citrix, and Salesforce. Comparatively, attempting to recreate a similar level of interoperability through open source or proprietary test automation products may be a much more complex endeavor, particularly once the nuances of business process automation delivery become apparent. RPA development, test, monitoring, and reporting solutions are all widely available through the all-in-one products offered by many RPA application vendors and are designed to integrate seamlessly with one another. Of course, this can carry a higher upfront cost, but recreating the same capability with various applications to the same quality and compatibility would often require significant investment in time and resources to achieve the same results. Conversely, such an approach can lead to vendor lock-in, limiting your options to offerings by a specific vendor as you grow dependent on their products to meet your needs. As such, thorough analysis should be performed before settling on a particular vendor, as the ability to change course or adjust further down the line may be hampered by initial decisions. By now, you may have noticed that the two technologies appear to be very similar, and indeed the underlying concept remains the same. Automate a process that would otherwise be performed manually by human users to be run whenever and as often as required. Now, there are many arguments for using industry-leading test automation software to automate business processes. For example, test automation may already be embedded in your organization, which means you may already have an extensive library of ready-to-use scenarios and experienced test engineers. Such solutions may also use open source frameworks, meaning the upfront cost to reuse existing code to automate your business processes may be low or even negligible. The added value from the rapid implementation of business process automation may also allow you to further realize the investment of your automated test approach. However, repurposing existing code written for testing purposes to perform business tasks may be significantly more difficult to achieve in practice. Your business users may use many applications throughout an end-to-end process, and your test tools will likely specialize in a limited range of these applications, such as web browsers. Many long-running processes, particularly with data that must be shared between steps, applications, or departments, may be extremely challenging to implement in their entirety using test automation solutions. You may also encounter resistance from your existing software testers who may not be comfortable with the additional responsibility of automating processes for use for business tasks in production environments. And there are many reasons why this may be the case. For example, the challenges of engaging with non-technical end users who may not have a full appreciation for the complexities involved in automation, or due to the extensive analysis required to account for all undocumented scenarios which often exist within any real-world business process. The consequences of erroneous automation can also cause significant business harm if left unchecked. Full-time developers who are already familiar with the responsibilities of maintaining, monitoring, and enhancing live applications may also struggle to achieve the desired output due to the limited scope of options and support for business process automation in software or frameworks with a specific focus on test automation. In short, test automation tools are built to be good at one thing, and that's test automation. This may mean that while you achieve initial success, scaling or continuous monitoring may be difficult or even impossible for automated business processes produced with software designed for testing purposes. So again, whilst in theory it's all automation, another important consideration must be to who will build and maintain your automated business processes. Engineers in test, either already employed internally or available on the market, familiar with test automation tools or products, may not have the aptitude or desire to automate business processes, as this could be interpreted as role creep. Of course, this is not always the case, as here at Ten10 we found that our heritage as a testing consultancy allowed for a natural and successful expansion into our RPA managed service offering. It's also important to consider how test automation are applied. Test cases and the tools and libraries used to build them have a specific focus on providing application or process confidence. The expected output of test cases is the metrics of a test run and the data associated with this. Conversely, the expected outcome of business process automation is the completion of a task that would have otherwise been assigned to a human. As such, RPA process failure rates must be extremely low, and exception handling, either through automation recovery or escalation to human supervisors, must be considered from the initial planning phase. The automation of a business process starts with understanding the process in its entirety from an end-user perspective. Existing documentation can usually only ever be considered mostly accurate due to the natural changes and efficiencies introduced as users perform repetitive processes over time. The actual application of a set of instructions may also differ between users who have their own specific approach to completing their work. These differences must be streamlined before introducing automation, as poorly built processes can, at best, fail to account for all the nuances, variations, and undocumented scenarios, and at worst, leach onto and exacerbate an issue which would lead to business harm. The most versatile RPA tools currently available on the market are overwhelmingly proprietary, one-size-fits-all applications that emphasize low-code development. This landscape is quite similar to the availability of test automation tools around 15 or so years ago. Whilst many capable proprietary test automation tools exist today, many of the most popular tools and technologies are now often open source and remain free thanks to a vast community of contributors. Of course, these frameworks often require coding experience, and the intended audience is developers and esthets. Conversely, RPA solutions will often be marketed towards end users with more limited coding experience, and as a result, RPA vendors often provide extensive free training and support to ensure success rather than relying on a community of users and forums. In our experience, professional RPA developers will still yield the best results when implementing RPA to ensure that automated processes are produced in an efficient and scalable manner. Implementing RPA can be compared to layering concrete over an existing process or application. Once it's there and serving business needs, it can be challenging to modify either the automated process or the application it runs on top of. As such, having successful at first implementation is critical to yield a positive return on investment. As the value proposition becomes apparent and business process automation demand grows within your organization, you'll find that as tens or even hundreds of automated processes are used, large and small, the maintenance and monitoring of overhead can quickly become a bottleneck to continued growth. How do you ensure that your most critical business processes are prioritized above other automation? How do you manage the ownership of automated processes and the underlying business process through your support model? How will your team manage the maintenance effort associated with changes to business processes or the applications they run on? A Center of Excellence model can certainly help with this, but ensuring that they have the necessary resources at their disposal is key to RPA success. RPA vendors often offer the tools required to ensure that automated process can be monitored and maintained across a complex enterprise environment. We've talked quite a lot now how test automation tools are being considered for developing automated business processes, but I wanted to very quickly cover how the reverse can also be applied in certain use cases. RPA platforms can naturally act as a solution for producing and running automated tests. Indeed, this is an officially supported use case in some of the leading RPA software vendors, such as UiPath, who offer their own test manager solution. Code used to drive applications and perform business processes can often be reused to test to confirm that these applications work as expected under various scenarios. Shared infrastructure can also be used to orchestrate automated business processes and automated test cases. This is especially important given the additional considerations that must be made when introducing RPA to your working environment. Any application change must consider both the human users and the robots following their program commands to complete their work. Over the course of this webinar, we compared differences and similarities in the approach, delivery, and scalability of RPA and test automation. But what does the future hold for the automation landscape? Well, RPA tools, much like test automation tools of yesteryear, would likely see the introduction of many open source alternatives and frameworks with a developer-specific focus. Perhaps most importantly, we believe that no single application or technology currently satisfies every single use case for both test automation and RPA. Some vendors do come close, but this requires a significant investment into a specific platform, which of course carries the risk of vendor lock-in, which could lead to inflexibility as new tools and technologies are introduced to the market. which may be more competitively priced or offer a superior automation experience. Proprietary applications will also likely need to become cheaper to remain competitive, as investment or acquisitions from more prominent tech companies such as Microsoft, Salesforce, or UiPath take hold. Their advantage will continue to be in the simplicity of setup, deployment, and maintenance compared to open source solutions. Advancements in machine learning and artificial intelligence will likely remain a key focus for RPA offerings, focusing on transforming unattended automation based on crucial predefined tasks to thinking tasks, which would further advance the capabilities of the automated processes. What is clear is that the automation landscape is more competitive than ever.
Okay, thank you. We're now going to move on to Q&A. I'm just going to bring up the panel on my screen over here. So looking at the first question here, the question is, do you find that implementing RPA means reducing workplace teams or reducing hiring needs? Now, to tackle the first part of that question there, as far as reducing workplace teams, in our experience, no human user has ever been outright replaced by a automated assistant or robot. Now, the reason for that is quite often the appetite just simply isn't there. The controversy surrounding RPA is that robots are going to take our jobs, whereas reality is that robots aren't people, and people do fantastic work that robots at this moment in time simply are unable to perform. So what we do see is a redeployment and redistribution of work where human users move away from those highly repetitive tasks, which can often lead to a high staff turnover or attrition rate. And instead they focus on more value proposition work, which really requires their ingenuity. However, with the hiring aspect, there is sometimes an impact on the hiring of organizations. For one of our clients, we have seen that what they are looking to do is take on a significant amount of new client work. And as a result of that, when looking at how they're going to be able to ensure that they have the necessary staff to complete that, they are looking to augment their existing workforce with robots. What that does mean is that instead of hiring human users to perform those tasks, instead RPA bots are being deployed to take on those tasks alongside human users. So there is certainly an element where hiring practices are being impacted in our experience. Looking at the second question we have here, I'm interested in utilizing RPA in my organization, but my manager is hesitant. Any tips for getting senior stakeholders to buy in? We often do see this as well in the RPA COE that we have set up for one of our clients. We quite often do get contacted by individuals who are quite excited by the concept of deploying bots to take over some of their more repetitive or complex tasks. However, ensuring that RPA is successfully deployed in those departments or areas can be quite an expensive endeavor. So even where we have businesses where RPA is already in use, there can still be a resistance or hesitation to put the investment in to move away from those human workers. And to tackle that, we actually have a multi-step process which begins with our feasibility assessments. So all processes have to be fully assessed to understand that they are suitable for automation. Includes looking at things like the failure rate of that process, the number of possible decision points, the complexities of recovery if something goes wrong, etc., to determine, is this a process which we would actually consider for RPA? Once we have done that initial groundwork, we then look to begin understanding, okay, well, how would this look in a post-automation world? And that's where we produce something called a process design document. From that, we seek to ascertain, okay, what kind of value are we looking to get out of these bots? How are we looking to deploy them? What are our scheduling? Is there going to be any application changes which are going to impact these processes in the near future, which we need to take into account? Is this application going away in a year or so if it's a legacy app? We produce all of this and we attempt to come up with a consensus of, okay, Based on everything we know about this process, the complexities around it, the potential benefits of introducing automation, would we recommend this is a process that we look to proceed with? And what exactly do we hope to achieve through the automation? So that's all quite extensive planning, but really to go back to what was said in the presentation, planning is key to ensuring that automation is going to be successful for these specific needs. So to get the stakeholder buy-in, I would initially look to consider that feasibility assessment. And okay, what do we have right now? What do we want to achieve? And come up with a proposition to your stakeholders of how we will look to implement that. The next question that I have is, assuming that you have documented your business processes, but you have no in-house skills, is it better to start an automation project with the process that offers the best return on investment, i.e. drives the most benefit, or the process that has the simplest to implement? Assume that we partner with somebody to deliver. Now that's quite a good question. It's quite a hard one to answer because there are two ways of looking at it. We would typically recommend that the simplest processes are the ones that you look to automate first, because quite often with, assuming that you're going down an RPA vendor route, such as UiPath or Automation Anywhere, it's not just kicking off automation. There is also the orchestrator platform to set up. There is testing to consider. That there's quite a lot of management around the infrastructure and the platform. So making sure that you can look at some small processes, ideally with the free offerings before you start to commit to enterprise pricing, is what we'd recommend, because then you get that quick turnaround. You can see, okay, is this application stack something that we are able to use? Is it something that we envision being widely distributed for our organization? As opposed to looking at the highest ROI processes, which probably are much more chunky, more complex, and if you do not have the in-house skill, could lead to a significant investment without very much return if the process ultimately doesn't achieve what you're looking to do, or is not something that you can successfully automate over a period of time. It's quite a hard call, but what, again, if you're looking at a business proposition, I would recommend looking at maybe one or two smaller processes just to make sure that you are able to find your feet with the world of RPA, whilst also looking at a slightly larger, higher ROI process as maybe your second or third process to deliver, because that's when you then really start getting the business value proposition, and you can really realize the value of RPA. We have another question here, and that is, I don't have much experience with RPA, but I do have test automation experience. How do I move these skills over? And so that's a great question. Obviously, Ten10 being a testing consultancy, our heritage is testing, and we have been able to successfully deploy our RPA managed service to multiple clients in a relatively short space of time. And the way we've done that is through training. As mentioned in the presentation, RPA as a technology isn't something that's as widely in use as test automation solutions, where you have a vast community of contributors, and there's quite a lot of help on Stack Overflow, other forums, etc. What these vendors often offer instead is extensive free training and certifications in order to ensure that you are able to use their software. And that's really where I would look. So, for example, UiPath, they have their Academy program. There's a lot of great materials for every role: business analysts, for developers, solution architects, implementation managers, etc. So the training is there. It's often free. I really recommend that. That's where you start. We have another question here, and that is, what is the difference between RPA and low-code test automation tools? From a fundamental concept, they are incredibly similar. The difference is really what you intend to do with them, or what their intended purpose is, I should say. So RPA is designed to automate business processes. Those are the repetitive processes run by human users in production settings. Test automation tools, or low-code test automation tools, are designed to provide business confidence in changes to applications or procedures or versions quickly and repetitively. So it's really what the vendors have built these two tools for, and the intended use case is what separates the two. But you are absolutely right. From a top level view, the fundamentals of the technology and even the applications and frameworks that they use under the hood are sometimes the same. And that is all of the questions that we actually do have in the pane here. So with that, I will look to end the presentation there. Thank you so much for your time, everybody. I really appreciate you coming along to listen to the webinar today. A copy of this presentation will be sent to everybody who has registered. And if you have any questions or would like to get in contact with us to discuss either test automation or RPA, you can reach us on the links displayed on the screen right now. Have a fantastic day all.